All right, let's step right into the shadows. We're heading back to the smoky streets of 1940s Los Angeles. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack literally the most infamous unsolved murder in American history, the incredibly tragic case of Elizabeth Short. As we pull back the curtain on this really dark, cinematic mystery, we'll sift through the dusty case files and try to separate the cold, hard facts from the enduring fiction.
You know, some mysteries get wrapped up in a matter of days, but the chilling tragedy of this young woman, it tells a hauntingly different story. We're talking over 70 years, 150 suspects, and absolutely zero convictions. It's a staggering reality, honestly, and it's created one of history's most enduring true crime puzzles.
Okay, to navigate this massive case file, we're going to break it down into 5 key parts: the girl in black, a shocking discovery, the media sensation, suspects and confessions, and finally, we'll look at the case's enduring legacy.
Starting off with Part 1, the girl in black. Before the myth totally overshadowed the reality, we really need to look at who Elizabeth Short actually was. There's just this incredible stark contrast between her tragic, everyday reality and the sensationalized Hollywood persona the press basically invented. Born in Boston back in 1924, Elizabeth had a really tough childhood. I mean, during the Great Depression, her father actually abandoned the family by faking his own suicide. Wow. When she eventually moved out to California to try and reconnect with him and find some new opportunities, she wasn't living this glamorous life. The press loved to call her an aspiring actress, but frankly, there's zero confirmed evidence she ever even worked in Hollywood. The reality, she held ordinary jobs like waitressing, just trying to make her way in the world.
So, you might be wondering, where did that famous nickname actually come from? Well, the Black Dahlia was a moniker fabricated entirely by the media. Friends remembered her having this really elegant style, mostly wearing black clothing, and she had striking dark hair. Reporters took that, spun it with the title of a popular 1946 film noir called The Blue Dahlia, and boom, a legend was born. But sadly, this catchy, cinematic nickname quickly eclipsed the real, vulnerable 22-year-old woman behind all the headlines.
Let's move to Part 2. A shocking discovery, which takes us to the grim morning of January 15, 1947. On that chilly morning, a local resident named Betty Berzinger was just out for a walk with her young daughter through the Leimert Park area of L.A. Passing a vacant lot, she spotted something. At first glance, she actually thought it was a discarded mannequin, but as she got closer, the horrifying reality set in. It was the body of a young woman. Police immediately secured the area and launched this massive homicide investigation. And remarkably, within just hours, the victim was identified. They matched her fingerprints from an old underage drinking arrest and an employment application. It was Elizabeth Short.
Now, the details of the crime scene were absolutely horrific. The official cause of death was determined to be hemorrhage and shock. She had suffered extensive injuries, and the killer had intentionally and meticulously posed her body. The sheer brutality and the dark, theatrical staging of the crime scene completely stunned the Los Angeles Police Department.
Which brings us to Part 3, the media sensation. This is where the press heavily derailed the trajectory of the case.
The press didn't just report on this case, they actively hindered it, creating what was easily one of the biggest media circuses in American history. Newspapers were fiercely competing for exclusives, literally publishing wild rumors as absolute facts. Things escalated to a whole new level when someone claiming to be the killer actually mailed an envelope filled with Elizabeth's personal belongings to a newspaper editor. To this day, we still don't know if that was the real killer or just some sick attention seeker. All of this created immense public pressure and flooded the police with unverified claims, drowning investigators in false tips, and making an already tough job almost impossible.
Let's open up the suspect files in Part 4, Suspects and Confessions, and look at the sheer chaos of the police investigation.
Over 60 different people falsely confessed to this brutal crime. I mean, think about that for a second. The sensationalism was so out of control, it drew out dozens of individuals just desperate for notoriety. And for the detectives, it was a total nightmare. Every single one of these confessions had to be tracked down and investigated, eating up precious time and resources, only for all of them to eventually fall apart.
And the actual scope of the manhunt was just as massive. 150. The LAPD actively pursued more than 150 different suspects throughout the course of this investigation. The sheer volume of leads, both real and totally fabricated, was just completely overwhelming.
So among the dozens of faces pinned to the evidence board, a few prominent names have really echoed through the decades. There was Mark Hansen, a nightclub owner who actually knew Elizabeth personally. He was questioned extensively. Then you have Leslie Dillon, a former mortician's assistant who raised major red flags because he knew non-public details about the murder. Oh, and Dr. George Hodel, a prominent physician. The police actually secretly wiretapped his home in 1950. Decades later, his own son, who happened to be a retired LAPD detective, argued forcefully that his dad did it, pointing to medical knowledge and handwriting. And finally, Janice Knowlton made huge headlines by accusing her own father, though significant inconsistencies completely dismantled her claims. But here's the kicker. Despite all of this suspicion, none of these men were ever definitively linked or charged in a court of law.
By 1949, things had stalled so badly that a grand jury had to be convened just to review the investigation and figure out what was going wrong. But despite exhaustive detective work and following literally every possible thread, the harsh reality set in. The leads dried up, the investigation stalled, and no charges were ever filed.
Finally, we arrive at Part 5, an enduring legacy. Let's examine exactly why the trail went cold and how this case changed true crime forever. You have to remember, investigators in 1947 were severely handicapped. While they relied on basic fingerprinting, secret wiretaps, and tough interrogations, they entirely lacked the pillars of modern forensics that solve cases today. They had absolutely no DNA analysis, no forensic genealogy to trace family trees, and obviously no digital tracking of cell phones or cameras. They simply lacked the scientific tools required to catch a killer who left no obvious physical trail behind. Compounding that extreme lack of technology was the overwhelming media interference that generated those countless false leads we talked about. And as the decades ticked by, a new enemy emerged: time itself. Key witnesses passed away, physical evidence deteriorated in damp storage rooms, the original detectives who walked that vacant lot in Lemur Park, they're no longer alive. While modern true crime researchers continue to dig, the likelihood of a definitive, legal answer shrinks with every passing year. Yet the shadow of the Black Dahlia remains. Elizabeth Short's murder became one of the world's most famous unsolved crimes. It permanently changed how the media covers crime and how police handle high-profile sensational investigations. It's inspired generations of analysis, from James Ellroy's famous novel to Steve Hodel's investigation into his own father. In a lot of ways, our modern cultural obsession with true crime was born right here, in the dark shadows of this very case. Because there is no statute of limitations on murder in California,